She bought an abandoned ranch for $1 and uncovered a secret the government tried to bury forever. Elena Carter had never imagined that her life would change because of a $1 decision. Just a year earlier, she had lived in a busy city, working long hours at a job that once felt stable. But when the company downsized, she lost her position overnight. At first, she believed she would quickly find another opportunity, but weeks turned into months, and the confidence she once carried began to fade. Her apartment felt smaller every day, filled with reminders of a life that no longer existed. The noise of traffic outside her window, which she once ignored, now felt overwhelming. She started spending long hours searching online, not just for jobs, but for something different. A way to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere that did not remind her of failure. One evening, while scrolling through a county auction website, she noticed a strange listing. The title was simple: Abandoned Ranch Property, Minimum Bid $1. She thought it was a mistake at first. Properties rarely sold for such a low price, even in remote areas. Curiosity pulled her in, and she clicked on the details. The ranch was located far from any major city, surrounded by wide-open land and rolling hills. The listing described it as abandoned for years, sold as is, with no guarantees about its condition. There were only a few faded photographs. One showed a weathered wooden house with broken shutters. Another revealed a long fence stretching toward distant mountains. The place looked forgotten, almost frozen in time. Most buyers would have closed the page and moved on, but Elena kept staring at the images. Something about the quiet emptiness of the land spoke to her. She imagined mornings filled with fresh air instead of car horns, evenings where the sky turned orange over open fields instead of concrete buildings. She began researching the property. There was very little information available. The ranch had changed ownership several times decades earlier, but records stopped suddenly after that. No recent maintenance reports existed. The county description mentioned safety concerns but gave no details. Friends she spoke to thought the idea was ridiculous. $1 sounded suspicious. Some joked that it might be haunted or falling apart. But Elena felt a strange sense of excitement she had not felt in months. For the first time since losing her job, she felt like she had control over something. After a sleepless night filled with questions, she placed her bid. The process was simple, almost too easy. A few days later, she received confirmation. She was now the owner of the abandoned ranch. The reality of it felt unreal. She packed her belongings into her aging car, keeping only essentials and a few sentimental items. The drive took hours, moving farther away from crowded highways and deeper into quiet rural roads. The landscape slowly changed, with wide fields and scattered farms replacing city buildings. When she finally turned onto the gravel road leading to the ranch, a sense of nervous anticipation filled her chest. Dust rose behind her tires as she drove toward the old gate. The wooden sign hanging near the entrance had faded so much that the original name of the ranch was barely readable. The property looked even more isolated in person. Tall grass surrounded the main house, and the wind moved through it with a soft whispering sound. The farmhouse stood slightly crooked, its paint worn away by years of weather. Broken boards leaned against the barn nearby, and an old tractor rested in the distance, half hidden by weeds. Elena stepped out of the car slowly. The air felt different, cleaner, quieter. For a moment she simply stood there, listening. There were no sirens, no engines, only the sound of wind and distant birds. She walked toward the front door, noticing how the porch creaked under her steps. Inside, the house smelled of dust and age. Furniture remained in place as if someone had left in a hurry years earlier. A chair sat near the window, angled toward the fields outside. A kitchen table held an old jar and a stack of yellowed papers. Despite the condition of the place, she felt hope. It was rough, but it was hers. Over the next few days, she explored the land carefully. The ranch was larger than she expected. Some fences had collapsed, and the barn roof showed signs of damage. She made notes about repairs, already planning how she might restore parts of the property over time. When she drove into the nearby town for supplies, she noticed people watching her more closely than usual. It was a small community where everyone seemed to know each other. At the local store, a woman behind the counter asked where she was staying. When Elena mentioned the ranch, the woman paused for a moment before forcing a polite smile. Another customer nearby suddenly became very interested in a shelf of canned goods. Later, an older man approached her quietly outside the store. He told her that many people had owned that property before, but none had stayed long. He did not explain why. He simply said, "Some places don't like being disturbed." Elena laughed politely, assuming he was repeating local legends meant to entertain newcomers. Still, his words stayed in her mind as she drove back. That night, as she settled into a makeshift bed, the silence felt heavier than before. Around midnight, she thought she heard a faint metallic sound somewhere outside. At first, she believed it was the wind hitting loose boards, but the sound repeated in a steady rhythm, almost mechanical. She grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the porch. Scanning the darkness, the land stretched endlessly under the moonlight. Nothing moved. No lights appeared in the distance. The sound stopped as suddenly as it had begun. She told herself it was nothing. Days passed, and she continued cleaning and organizing the house. Under layers of dust, she discovered old photographs showing previous owners standing proudly in front of the ranch. Their expressions looked hopeful, similar to how she felt now. One afternoon, while walking behind the barn, she noticed something unusual. Part of the ground looked uneven, as if the earth had been disturbed long ago. Tall grass covered the area, but beneath it she found the corner of a metal roof partially buried in dirt. Curiosity pushed her closer. Brushing away soil with her hands, she uncovered what appeared to be a small shed or storage structure hidden behind years of overgrowth. The door was locked with a rusted chain, and there were no markings indicating what it had been used for. She stood there for a long moment, feeling a strange mix of excitement and unease. The shed had not appeared in any property documents she had reviewed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch, Elena realized that buying the property might not be as simple as starting a new life. There were stories hidden here, pieces of the past waiting to be uncovered. Holding the rusted chain in her hands, she wondered who had locked the shed and why it had been left behind. Elena stood in front of the buried shed for a long moment, staring at the rusted chain that held the door closed. The metal looked old, eaten away by time and weather, yet it still felt strangely strong. The wind moved through the tall grass around her, making soft sounds that seemed louder in the quiet emptiness of the ranch. She told herself there was probably a simple explanation. Maybe the previous owners had locked away tools or old equipment before leaving. Still, something about the hidden location of the shed made her uneasy. It had not appeared on any map or property record she had reviewed before buying the land. As the sky grew darker, she decided to wait until morning. Working alone in fading light felt risky, and she wanted to approach the discovery carefully. That night, however, sleep came slowly. Her thoughts kept returning to the locked structure behind the barn. The faint mechanical sound she had heard the night before returned again, echoing softly across the fields. It lasted only a few seconds, then disappeared. She sat up in bed listening closely, but everything went silent again. The next morning, Elena gathered basic tools and walked back to the shed. Sunlight revealed more details she had missed before. The metal roof had patches of faded paint, and near the base she noticed something else, small ventilation openings, partially blocked by dirt. This did not look like a normal storage building. She hesitated before touching the chain. Breaking it felt like crossing a line, but she reminded herself that she owned the property now. Whatever was inside belonged to the ranch. With steady hands, she used a tool to loosen the rusted lock. It resisted at first, then suddenly snapped open with a sharp sound that echoed across the land. Elena paused, half expecting someone to appear or stop her, but nothing happened. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Dust fell from the hinges as it moved, releasing a stale smell that suggested the space had been closed for many years. Inside, instead of farm tools, she found old metal cabinets lined against the walls. A long table stood in the center, covered with papers protected by plastic sheets. The air felt heavy, almost untouched by time. She stepped forward carefully, shining her flashlight across the room. There were maps pinned to one wall marked with lines and symbols she did not understand. Boxes filled with folders sat stacked in the corner. Some labels had faded completely, but others remained readable. Elena opened one cabinet slowly. Inside were thick envelopes stamped with official-looking seals. Many pages had black sections covering parts of the text, as if someone had tried to hide information. The dates on the documents went back decades. Her heart began to beat faster. This was not ordinary ranch history. She spent hours going through the materials, organizing them into small piles. Several papers mentioned environmental surveys and land testing. Others contained diagrams that looked technical, showing underground structures or systems she could not fully understand. One map caught her attention more than the others. It showed the ranch property from above, but beneath it were drawings of tunnels or rooms extending below the surface. Some areas were marked with warning symbols. She sat back, overwhelmed. Why would a remote ranch have underground plans like this? Later that afternoon, she decided to visit town again, hoping to learn more. At the local library, she searched through old newspapers and records. Most mentions of the ranch were normal: livestock sales, weather reports, occasional advertisements. But then she found a small article from many years earlier describing complaints from nearby residents about strange activity in the area. The article was brief and lacked details, but it mentioned unusual lights at night and vehicles visiting the property regularly. After that year, there were no further reports. When she asked the librarian about the ranch, the woman's expression changed slightly. She spoke politely but carefully, saying that some places had complicated histories best left alone. Elena left with more questions than answers. On her way back to the ranch, she noticed a dark vehicle parked along the road far behind her. It remained at a distance, never getting too close, but she felt watched. When she turned onto her gravel path, the vehicle slowed before continuing down the main road. Back at the house, she spread the documents across the table, taking photographs and making notes. She felt both excited and nervous. Part of her wondered if she should contact authorities, but another part worried that doing so might cause the materials to disappear. That evening, while cleaning near the fireplace, she noticed scratches on the wooden floorboards. They formed a faint outline, almost like a square shape. Kneeling down, she brushed away dust and realized the boards were slightly loose. Carefully lifting one edge, she discovered a hidden compartment beneath the floor. Inside were more papers wrapped in cloth, along with an old cassette recorder. The tapes were labeled with dates and initials. She felt a chill run through her. Whoever had lived here before had hidden these items intentionally. Elena placed one cassette into an old player she had found earlier in the house. The sound crackled at first, then a voice began speaking softly. The recording sounded like an interview or personal log, discussing work being done at the ranch. The speaker mentioned safety concerns and long hours monitoring equipment. The voice stopped suddenly, followed by silence. As night fell, Elena realized she had stepped into something far larger than she expected when she bought the ranch. This was not just an abandoned property. It was a place filled with hidden stories and unanswered questions. Outside, the wind grew stronger, moving across the land like waves. She stood on the porch, staring toward the barn and the buried shed beyond it. The quiet landscape felt different now, no longer just empty space, but a puzzle waiting to be solved. Just as she turned to go back inside, headlights appeared briefly on the distant road. A vehicle slowed near the entrance before continuing on. The sight made her uneasy. She locked the door carefully that night, placing the documents in a safe place. Sleep came slowly again, filled with thoughts about underground maps and hidden recordings. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that whatever secrets the ranch held had not been forgotten completely, and now that she had begun uncovering them, it felt like something, or someone, had started paying attention. Elena woke before sunrise, her thoughts already focused on a hidden compartment she had discovered beneath the farmhouse floor. The cassette recording from the night before continued to echo in her mind. The voice had sounded calm but worried, as if the person speaking knew something important yet could not say everything openly. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, reviewing the photographs she had taken of the maps and documents from the shed. The drawings showing underground structures still felt unreal. Part of her wondered if she had misunderstood what she was seeing, but the details were too precise to ignore. Outside, the ranch looked peaceful under the early morning light. The hills stretched endlessly, and a thin layer of mist hovered over the grass. It felt hard to believe that anything unusual could exist beneath such a quiet landscape. After breakfast, she returned to the farmhouse floor where the hidden compartment had been. Carefully lifting the boards again, she pulled out the remaining tapes and papers. Many pages contained handwritten notes, some describing equipment checks and daily routines. Others mentioned coordinates and times, almost like logs. One page stood out. It listed a series of numbers next to the words, "Access below." Elena felt her pulse quicken. Could there be another hidden entrance somewhere on the property? She grabbed her notebook and began comparing the numbers with the map from the shed. Slowly, a pattern appeared. The coordinates seemed to point toward the main barn. The idea made her both excited and nervous. She had explored the barn already, but only on the surface. If there was an underground access point, it could be hidden beneath equipment or covered by debris. Walking toward the barn, she noticed how quiet the air felt again. Even the birds seemed distant. The large wooden doors creaked as she pushed them open. Sunlight filtered through broken slats, creating long lines of light across the dusty floor. She moved slowly, scanning every corner. Old tools hung on the walls, and stacks of hay bales filled one side of the building. Near the back, she noticed an area where the ground looked slightly uneven, similar to what she had seen near the buried shed. Kneeling down, she brushed away dirt and loose straw. Beneath it, she felt the edge of metal. Her breath caught as she cleared more of the surface, revealing a rectangular hatch built into the floor. The hatch had no handle, only a small recessed grip barely visible beneath the dust. For a moment she hesitated, thinking about what she might find below. Then she pulled. The hatch opened with a heavy sound, releasing a rush of cool air from beneath the ground. A narrow staircase disappeared into darkness. Elena stood there, listening. No sound came from below. The silence felt deep and heavy. She grabbed a flashlight and began descending carefully. Each step felt colder than the last. The walls were reinforced with metal panels, far more industrial than anything expected beneath a ranch. At the bottom, the passage opened into a corridor. The floor was smooth, and cables ran along the walls, though many looked inactive. Signs with faded warnings hung near doorways. Some rooms were empty except for broken equipment, while others contained shelves filled with old devices she could not identify. It felt less like a shelter and more like a facility. Elena moved slowly, documenting everything with her phone camera. She noticed control panels covered in dust and chairs positioned in front of screens that no longer worked. On one wall, a large map displayed the surrounding land, marked with zones and numbered sections. She tried to imagine people working here years ago, moving through the corridors with purpose.
The thought made the space feel less abandoned, as if echoes of the past remained hidden in the air.
In one room, she found stacks of sealed boxes. Opening one carefully, she discovered more files labeled with dates matching the documents from the shed. Many pages described monitoring systems and environmental readings. Some notes mentioned concerns about long-term effects, though the details were unclear. As she explored deeper, she reached a heavy door marked with faded paint. Unlike the others, this one remained tightly closed. She pushed against it, but it did not move. A small panel beside it showed signs of electronic locking mechanisms, long since shut down. She wondered what might be behind it. After several hours underground, she returned to the surface, feeling both amazed and overwhelmed. The discovery confirmed that the ranch had once been used for something far beyond normal farming. Later that afternoon, she sat outside the house, trying to organize her thoughts. The sun dipped lower, casting warm light across the fields. Everything looked peaceful again, almost ordinary. Then she heard the sound of tires on gravel. A vehicle approached slowly and stopped near the gate. Two people stepped out, dressed in plain clothing that gave little away about who they were. Elena felt a sudden tension as they walked toward her. They introduced themselves politely, saying they were reviewing older land records in the area. Their tone remained calm but serious. One of them asked if she had discovered anything unusual on the property. Elena hesitated, unsure how much to say. She mentioned only that she had found old structures and documents. The visitors exchanged brief glances. One suggested that some parts of the land might be unsafe and recommended avoiding unnecessary exploration. Their words sounded friendly on the surface, but something about their delivery felt like a warning. After a short conversation, they left as quietly as they had arrived. That evening, Elena felt restless. The encounter confirmed that others knew more about the ranch than they were willing to share. Instead of feeling afraid, she felt more determined to uncover the truth. She reviewed the recordings again, listening carefully for clues she might have missed. One voice mentioned monitoring underground areas that had been sealed after the project ended. Another hinted at concerns about leaving certain equipment behind. As night fell, she stepped outside once more. The stars filled the sky, bright and endless. Standing there, she realized that buying the ranch for $1 had brought her into a story far larger than her own life. The hidden corridors, the sealed rooms, the quiet warnings from strangers. Everything pointed toward a past someone had tried to forget, and now she had opened the door to it. Elena could not stop thinking about the two visitors who had come to the ranch. Their polite smiles and calm voices had hidden something deeper. They had not introduced themselves clearly, and their questions felt too focused to be casual curiosity. Most of all, the way they suggested she avoid exploring certain areas stayed in her mind long after they left. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, photographs, and notes she had taken during her discoveries. The underground corridor was real. The sealed rooms were real, and now it seemed clear that someone else knew about them and preferred that they remained hidden. Instead of feeling discouraged, Elena felt more determined. She knew she needed help, not just emotional support, but people who understood research, history, and investigation better than she did alone. The next morning, she drove into town and visited the small library again. This time, she approached her search differently. Instead of looking only for articles about the ranch itself, she searched for regional projects, land surveys, and government contracts from decades earlier. Hours passed as she turned pages and scanned old records. Slowly, patterns began to appear. Several nearby properties had been purchased by organizations with vague names many years ago. Some transactions involved research permits or environmental studies. However, many details were incomplete or missing. She noticed that after a certain year, references to the area suddenly stopped appearing in public records. It was as if a chapter of history had been quietly closed. While she worked, the librarian approached her gently and asked if she had found what she needed. Elena hesitated before asking if the librarian remembered anything unusual about the ranch from the past. The older woman paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. She said that years ago people in town had noticed increased activity near the ranch, unfamiliar trucks arriving at night, workers who did not socialize locally, and sudden road closures that were never explained. Then one day, everything stopped. The workers disappeared and the ranch fell silent. No official explanation had ever been given. Elena thanked her and left, her mind racing. Back at the ranch, she began organizing her findings more carefully. She scanned documents, labeling each file and writing summaries to keep track of important details. If someone tried to take the materials away, she wanted proof preserved elsewhere. Later that afternoon, she contacted a small independent journalist she had found online. He specialized in historical investigations and forgotten stories. At first, he sounded skeptical, but when she described the underground corridor and showed him photographs through a video call, his interest grew quickly. He suggested verifying everything slowly and carefully before sharing it publicly. Facts matter, he told her. And if this is real, it needs to be handled responsibly. Over the next few days, Elena continued exploring the underground facility, focusing on documentation rather than touching anything unnecessarily. She took photos of signs, equipment labels, and architectural details. Each new discovery raised more questions than answers. One evening, while reviewing the maps again, she noticed something she had missed before. Certain sections of the underground structure were marked with heavy lines, almost as if they had been intentionally sealed off. She wondered what lay behind those barriers. Outside, the weather changed suddenly. Strong winds moved across the ranch, carrying dark clouds with them. The sky turned gray, and rain began to fall heavily. She stood at the window watching the storm, feeling the isolation of the land more deeply than ever before. During the storm, the electricity flickered briefly. She checked the power lines but saw nothing unusual. Still, the feeling of being watched returned. The next day, she found a letter taped to her gate. It contained no name, only a short printed message suggesting that certain discoveries could cause unnecessary complications and advising her to consider leaving the property for safety reasons. The tone was calm but unsettling. Instead of feeling afraid, Elena felt anger rising inside her. She had bought the land legally. She had done nothing wrong. Whoever left the message clearly wanted her to stop searching. She decided then that silence would not help. She contacted the journalist again and shared more details, along with copies of the documents she had scanned. He began reaching out to experts who could analyze the materials. Soon, Elena found herself speaking with historians and environmental researchers who helped interpret some of the technical language. They suggested that the facility may have been used for experimental monitoring or advanced research related to land or technology. However, many specifics remained unclear. As interest grew, she noticed more vehicles passing near the ranch. Some slowed briefly before continuing down the road. None stopped, but their presence made her more cautious. One afternoon, she returned to the underground corridor with a stronger flashlight and protective gloves. She wanted to examine the sealed door again. Standing in front of it, she felt both curiosity and respect for whatever lay behind it. She ran her fingers along the edges, noticing marks suggesting it had been closed intentionally and not simply abandoned. Without proper tools, she could not open it safely. For now, she decided to leave it alone. Instead, she focused on gathering evidence of what she could see. She filmed a detailed walkthrough, explaining each room and its contents. Speaking aloud helped her organize her thoughts and maintain clarity. Back upstairs, she edited the footage and prepared a secure backup. She realized that transparency might be her strongest protection. The more people who knew about the discoveries, the harder it would be for the story to disappear. A few days later, the journalist informed her that a small online publication wanted to feature her story. It would not reveal everything immediately, but would introduce the mystery and raise questions about forgotten projects in rural areas. Elena agreed, understanding that sharing the truth slowly might attract attention while giving her time to learn more. When the article was published, reactions began appearing online almost immediately. Some readers dismissed it as coincidence or exaggeration, while others shared similar stories about unexplained facilities in remote locations. As the sun set that evening, Elena stood outside watching the land stretch endlessly around her. She felt tired but stronger than before. The ranch was no longer just a place she had bought for a fresh start. It had become a mission, a search for truth hidden beneath layers of silence. She knew that challenges might still come, but she also felt that she was no longer alone. People were beginning to listen. Ellen awoke early the morning after the article about the ranch was published. Her phone showed several new messages from people she did not know. Some were supportive, others curious, and a few asked detailed questions about the underground facility. The attention felt overwhelming, but she also felt relief. The story was no longer hidden in silence. Outside, the ranch looked calm under the rising sun. The field stretched wide and quiet, as if nothing unusual had ever happened there. Yet Elena knew that beneath the surface, both physically and emotionally, everything had changed. Over the next few days, more journalists reached out to her. Some wanted quick headlines, but she chose carefully who to speak with. She wanted the story to remain respectful and factual, not exaggerated or turned into something unrealistic. The independent journalists she trusted continued helping her verify information step by step. Experts began reviewing the documents she had shared. A historian identified certain project codes connected to government-funded research programs from decades earlier. Environmental specialists analyzed the reports and confirmed that the language suggested monitoring experiments rather than anything harmful. Still, many sections remained unclear because of heavy redactions. Soon, local authorities contacted Elena requesting permission to visit the ranch officially. Their tone was professional and polite, very different from the earlier mysterious visitors who had warned her to stop exploring. After thinking carefully, she agreed, wanting transparency rather than conflict. On the day of the visit, several vehicles arrived carrying investigators, engineers, and historians. They walked through the property slowly, examining the shed, the farmhouse, and eventually the underground corridor. Elena felt nervous as she led them down the staircase. Seeing others walk through the facility made the place feel less like a secret and more like a historical site waiting to be understood. The investigators documented everything carefully, taking measurements and photographs. One engineer confirmed that the construction style matched facilities built during a specific era of research expansion. According to him, many projects from that time were closed quickly, leaving behind sites that were rarely discussed afterward. During the inspection, the sealed door deep underground attracted special attention. With proper equipment, the team carefully examined its structure. After long discussion, they decided to open it safely under controlled conditions. Elena watched from a short distance as they worked. Her heart raced as tools touched the metal for the first time in decades. Slowly, the door opened with a low sound, revealing another chamber beyond. Inside, they found additional equipment, shelves of documents, and sealed containers labeled with technical codes. The space looked untouched, preserved like a moment frozen in time. Experts moved carefully, cataloging every detail. Later that afternoon, the team gathered outside to share preliminary conclusions. They explained that the ranch appeared to have been part of a monitoring program connected to environmental and technological research. The project had ended suddenly due to changing priorities and concerns about cost, and the site had been abandoned without full public explanation. Nothing dangerous was found, but the secrecy surrounding the program had allowed rumors to grow over the years. Hearing this, Elena felt a mix of relief and amazement. The mystery she had stepped into had been real, yet not as dark or threatening as her imagination had feared. News of the discovery spread quickly. More articles appeared, and public interest grew. Some people praised Elena for her courage and curiosity. Others expressed fascination with how easily history could disappear when no one asked questions. Despite the attention, Elena tried to keep her life simple. She continued repairing the ranch, fixing fences, and cleaning rooms in the farmhouse. The physical work grounded her, reminding her that beyond the mystery, this was still her home. One evening she sat on the porch watching the sky turn orange as the sun set behind the hills. The land felt different now, not haunted by secrets, but alive with stories finally coming into the light. The government eventually released a statement acknowledging the existence of the old research program. While many details remained classified, enough information became public to confirm that the ranch had once played a role in a larger network of experimental monitoring sites. Officials also offered support in preserving parts of the facility as a historical landmark. Elena was surprised by the idea, but she slowly began to see its value. Instead of hiding the past, the ranch could become a place where people learned about history and transparency. Months passed, and visitors occasionally came to see the property. Elena guided small tours, sharing the story of how she had bought the ranch for $1 and discovered something unexpected beneath her feet. Each time she told the story, she focused not on fear or secrecy, but on curiosity and persistence. She explained how easy it was to ignore small mysteries and how important it was to ask questions respectfully. The ranch began to feel less isolated. New friendships formed with researchers and neighbors who now visited more openly. Even some townspeople who had once avoided the property started stopping by to talk. One afternoon, the older man who had warned her at the store months earlier visited. He smiled gently and admitted that many people had always wondered what truly happened at the ranch, but never had the courage to look deeper. As seasons changed, Elena realized that the ranch had given her more than a fresh start. It had given her purpose. She had come searching for a quiet place to rebuild her life, and instead she had uncovered a story that connected past and present. Standing at the edge of the fields one evening, she reflected on how everything had begun with a simple decision: clicking on a listing that most people ignored. The $1 purchase had not just changed her circumstances, it had revealed how hidden histories could still shape the world if someone was willing to listen. The wind moved gently through the grass, carrying a feeling of peace rather than mystery. The underground corridors remained as reminders of what once existed. But now they were no longer silent secrets. They were part of a story finally told,